Welcome to Fundamentals of Cybersecurity, CSCI150N. This is Chapter 24, Legal Issues and Ethics. In this chapter, you will learn how to explain the laws and rules concerning importing and exporting encryption software, identify the laws that govern computer access and trespass, identify the laws that govern encryption and digital rights management, identify the laws that govern digital signatures, and explore ethical issues associated with information security. In this lecture, we're going to cover cybercrime and ethics. Three types of computer crimes commonly occur. The differentiating factor is how the computer is specifically involved from the criminal's point of view. There's computer-assisted crime, that's the computer is used as a tool. Computer-targeted crime, where the computer is the victim of the crime. Computer-incidental crime, the computer that is incidentally involved in the crime. With the three forms of computer involvement in criminal activity, multiplied by the myriad of ways a criminal can use a computer to steal or defraud, added to the indirect connection mediated by the computer and the Internet, computer crime in the 21st century is a complex problem. There are some common Internet crime schemes you'll see out there. To find crime, just follow the money, and in the United States, the FBI and the National White Collar Crime Center have joined forces in developing the Internet Crime Complaint Center, an online clearinghouse that communicates issues associated with cybercrime. One of the items provided to the online community is a list of common Internet crime schemes and explanations of each, and you're welcome to go to the site and take a look at them yourself. A separate list offers advice on how to prevent these crimes through individual actions. So you want to also associate yourself with that, because those very same things to protect yourself as an individual, you can incorporate into your job working for an organization providing security. So when we talk about crime, we're actually talking about laws too. In the United States, there are three primary sources of laws and regulations that affect our lives and govern our actions. There's statutory law, which is passed by a legislative body of government, be it Congress, your local city council, or your state legislature. Administrative law is the power of government-sponsored agencies such as the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, the Federal Aviation Administration, the Federal Communication Commission, and others to enforce behaviors through administrative rulemaking. Common law or case law, which is based on previous events or precedents. This source of law comes from the judicial branch of government. Judges decide on the applicability of laws and the regulations. Think of Supreme Court or other courts of appeal. When a judge makes a decision and sets a precedence for the first time, and other judges refer to that, that's considered common law. So when we think about computer hacking, we're often thinking about computer trespass, which is the unauthorized entry into a computer system via any means, including remote network connections. These crimes have introduced a new area of law that has both national and international consequences. For crimes that are committed within a country's border, national laws apply. For cross-border crimes, international laws and international treaties are the norm. Computer-based trespass can occur even if countries do not share a physical border. The Convention on Computer Crime is the first international treaty on crimes committed via the Internet and other computer networks. The Convention is a product of 4 years of work by the Council of Europe, but also the United States, Canada, Japan, and other non-Council of Europe countries. The convention has been ratified and came into force back in July of 2004, and by September 2006, 15 member nations have ratified it. The United States ratified it in the summer of 2006, with it entering into force in the United States in January 2007. When it comes to significant electronic law, most of these acts that are listed here, you'll see in the next chapter when we talk about privacy. Most of them are centered around protecting private data from disclosure. Some others, like the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, also protect against unauthorized access to computer systems. For example, the Computer Fraud Act, Fraud and Abuse Act, is often used when there is no other case law that can be used to prosecute somebody. It's kind of the catch-all. Well, were you authorized to do it? The answer was no. Okay, well then it falls under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. You don't have authorization to do something, you have committed computer fraud. Controlling the assault of non-solicited porn and marketing act is on solicitation for pornographic site, unwanted solicitation for it. The Patriot Act has to do with the transmission of terrorism type of communications. And then you've got the others down below there, the GLBA and the SOX, which are more financially governed. I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but there are criminal aspects to each one of these laws, and you can read up on the laws yourself. In the next chapter, you're going to see PCI DSS, or Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, from a privacy point of view. But from a criminal and security point of view, what you need to understand is that there are 6 control objectives with a total of 12 requirements that any organization that accepts debit or credit card payments from any of the major credit card companies require. So since most of you are working some kind of place that has some kind of electronic transaction, it's important to understand the basics of this. One is to build and maintain a secure network. So the requirement is that you install and maintain a firewall configured to protect the card holder data. 2, do not use any vendor-supplied defaults for passwords or security parameters. You should specifically configure the parameters and the passwords yourself. Then the second control is protect cardholder data. So you want requirement number 3 is protect and store cardholder data, so their personal information, their name, their address, and so forth. That kind of falls under the privacy that you'll talk about the next chapter. Then requirement 4 is encrypt transmission of cardholder data across open public networks. So any transaction or transfer of personal information that's being stored through the credit card transaction should be done encrypted. Number 3, maintain a vulnerability management program. So you should have some kind of program in place that protects all systems against malware and regularly update antivirus software or programs. And develop and maintain secure systems and applications, and that's usually done by doing vulnerability scans and finding out what patches need to be applied to systems and what configurations need to be reconfigured because they're not secure. 4, implement strong access control measures. Restrict access to cardholder data by business need to know. So if somebody doesn't need to know the credit card information, then they shouldn't have access to it. So yes, the clerk or the associate at the point of sale terminal may need to have you swipe it through, but they shouldn't have to have access to your card data once that transaction is complete. They should not be able to look it back up or anything of that sort. Requirement 8 is identify and authenticate access to system components. So you should have some kind of authentication for those who do access the information, who do access the credit purchase records and so on and so forth at your organization. Requirement 9 is restrict physical access to cardholder data. So somebody should not be able to access the computer that stores it directly. We've talked about before, if I can have physical access to a system, I can pretty much get in and get what I want from it. Control number 5 is regularly monitor and test networks. So one of the requirements is to track and monitor all access to network resources and cardholder data. So you should be, if they are accessing cardholder data, it should be logged anytime it's accessed. Then regular test security systems and processes. So this can involve pen testing or other types of testing, including the vulnerability testing that we're talking about. 6 is to maintain an information security policy. Maintain a policy that addresses information security for all personnel at your organization, because even if they're not directly accessing the credit card holder data directly, as you can see in many breaches that are out there. Sometimes somebody who is a administrative assistant for a VP or whatever, somebody who has no access directly to that data, clicks on a link in an email, gets their computer infected, and the next thing you know, they move laterally within the network, gaining access to sensitive systems and elevating their access, as we talked about in incident handling, until they get to the information that they want. So, in example, the Target hack, it was through access to a environmental control system that they were first able to get into the network before they got to the credit card information on Target's system. Encryption technology has been controlled by governments for a variety of reasons. The level of control varies from outright banning to little or no regulation. The reasons behind the control varies as well, and control over import and export is a vital method of maintaining a level of control over encryption technology in general. U.S. law places controls on the exporting of commercial encryption products and are administered by the Bureau of Industry and Security in the U.S. Department of Commerce. The limitations on the strength of the encryption that can be exported outside of the country, and it can actually be regulated as considered a sale of arms or a weapon under some portions of U.S. law. The export controls for encryption technology falls under the Weisenhower Arrangement, an international agreement on export controls for conventional arms and dual-use goods and technologies. So they see encryption as in some sense weaponized. So the reason for the United States restricting the capability to export the technology is because of the Weisenhower Agreement, but also because we don't necessarily want high levels of encryption strength in the hands of our enemy. Other countries like China restrict the level of encryption that their citizens can use because they want to be able to obviously monitor personnel within their country and the traffic that they're generating. Ethics have been a subject of study for centuries. It might be surprising to note that ethics associated with computer systems has a history dating back to the beginning of the computing age. The first examination of cybercrime occurred in the late 1960s, when the professional conduct of computer professionals was examined with respect to their activities in the workspace. If we consider ethical behavior to be consistent with the existing social norms, it can be fairly easy to see what is considered right and wrong. But with the globalization of commerce and the globalization of communication via the internet, questions are raised on what is appropriate social norm. Cultural issues can have wide-ranging effects on this, and although the idea of an appropriate code of conduct for the world is appealing, it is yet an unachievable objective. The issue of globalization has significant local effect. If a user wishes to express free speech via the internet, is this protected behavior or a criminal behavior? Different localities have different sets of laws to deal with items such as free speech, with some recognizing the right and others prohibiting it. With the globalization of business, what are the appropriate controls for intellectual property when some regions support this right, while others don't even recognize intellectual property as something of value, but rather something owned by the collective of the society? For example, capitalist countries believe in intellectual rights and property, while more socialist and communist countries believe in socialized rights of intellectual property. The challenge in today's business environment is to establish and communicate a code of ethics so that everyone associated with an enterprise can understand the standard of expected performance. So that is done through codes of ethics within the professional organizations themselves. In order to be a member, you must comply with them. Listed here, I have 4 different organizations that support some kind of security certificate which has a code of ethics that is associated with it. The first is SANS. The second is ISACA, which has the CISM certification. Then there's ISC Squared, which has the CISSP certification. And then CompTIA, which does the Security Plus certification. In most cases, the code of ethics are pretty similar. You are to perform to the best of your ability. You are to provide excellence in what you do. You are to be honest. You will strive to convey knowledge. You will teach and assist others. You will not advance your private interests at the expense of end users, colleagues, or your employer. You will not abuse your power or trust that you have placed within you. You will not steal property, time, or resources. You will not accept bribes or kickbacks from anybody to do favors, and you will not. You will report any illegal activities of yourself or others without respect to punishment involved. You will not injure others or property or anything of that sort. You will not affect the availability of systems intentionally or commit espionage, and many other ethical elements. The important thing here is that you understand that with the job that we do in security, there's a level of trust. And when you violate that trust, when you do something to break that trust, it is very hard for you to continue on in this career, because this career is based upon reputation and trust that people have in you. And if you notice, I keep saying the word trust. There's a reason for that. Consider it my foot stomp. Trust is everything. Don't lie, don't cheat, or steal from your employer or anybody else, because your reputation will get around. People do talk about each other in this industry, and it is likely to catch up with you at some point or another if you do something dishonest or immoral as a professional in this field. So you need to make sure you stay on the right side of the law. I've had a couple of people in my classes ask about gray hat or black hatting hacking, asking about it as a means of gaining a reputation in order to build their professional resume. I will tell you flat out, I will never ever advocate breaking into people's systems or making unauthorized access to any system in order to build a reputation or to build know-how, or even just as a means of trying to learn something new. You will never hear me advocate anything illegal, immoral, or unethical for my students. I highly recommend, if you ever want to learn more about things like black hatting and gray hatting, there are legitimate ways and legal ways to do it through things like the Honeypot Project and many other ways. Do not, in any point, take any knowledge you have from this class or any other classes you've received and use it for a means of doing something unethical. I'm your instructor, Peter Keurig for Nashville Community College. Thank you for watching.